July the 1st, 2023. Well, the year is half over, and well, technically, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it, noon tomorrow, I guess, is when it really will be half over. But anyhow, so a lot has happened, but I guess the key thing is the Supreme Court has finally wrapped up its session with its final decisions. And overall, I think that we had some really good decisions in there. We had one really bad one. I mean, and a couple that were, well, marginal I can think of. I mean, the really bad one was saying that the states didn't have standing to object to the way the immigration law is being applied. Although, in the long run, that could be to our benefit if we could win the presidency back, since it seems to give the president discretion. And but right now we're stuck with Biden, so that's that. But the big ones that I think we look forward to, the really good one, of course, I think that the fact that they struck down that student loan forgiveness thing that Biden did, which was completely illegal. I mean, he had no right to do it. Even Nancy Pelosi said that the president didn't have any right to do it. Of course, until he did it, probably. Now she says he does have, but everybody knew this was a stretch. It was an inappropriate use of a law that was designed to provide relief to veterans and people serving during the war. Back after the 9/11, and instead they're trying to use it for some massive loan forgiveness program. And of course that'll at least save $400 billion of national debt, I guess, if we can be sustained. I think they're trying to find a workaround, but we may be able to strike that down too, huh? And of course the other one I think good, of course, the affirmative action decision on the college admissions is a very good one, because of course it was very discriminatory, particularly against Asians that were really outperforming, and we're getting denied admission to college because of racial prejudice issues, that they prefer, I guess, Latinos and blacks to Asians. So I mean, that was the main thing that was happening on that, and so I think that was a very good decision. I mean, that's and then of course the decision on the person that on the wedding issues. I guess it was a website. I think he made. I think this was a website. It's not. I don't think this was a cake. I think it was a website. But whatever. That basically ruled that they couldn't force people to do expressions in their business that were against their religious beliefs, because obviously you can find somebody else who would gladly do it. So why do you force everybody to do it? But and this could, of course, you could imagine the other way around. Suppose you had a liberal site and somebody wanted to put some radically, right-wing position that they didn't like, or something else, or even something that was truly, whatever. You get the idea that essentially that this gives the people some rights on that. I think there's another decision that was made giving some deference to religious accommodations and work, although that was not nearly as definitive, and I think it got referred to a lower court for further review. So we'll see where that goes. But anyway, I think overall, I think that we can look that the court kind of came through pretty good for us on this time. I mean, the immigration thing, not as good, but obviously the court could always use the standing issue when they really don't want to make a decision, even if it doesn't make any sense sometimes. However, okay, but anyway, but if you like these videos, please give me a like, and you can, of course, subscribe if you haven't, and I forward links to people that might want to see it otherwise. Yeah, so that's kind of the rundown of the courts here. Of course, the real issue on the court is, of course, it's immediately condemned by the Biden administration and liberals. And remember, these guys do want to actually pack the court for political purposes and try to turn the court into just a political sham type situation. And of course that would happen if the Democrats win the 2024 election with a sufficient margin to where they have control of the Senate, the House, and the presidency, provided that that they have all the numbers. I mean, they probably need to still overrule Joe Manchin, and right now, in fact, they're only one senator away from being able to pass something like that, although I don't know if they want to pass it while facing an election. I think they want to do it a little bit away from the election. and Manchin still won't vote for it, and Sinema won't vote for it, although she's not in the caucus. But I think they'd only need one of the two to switch over in order uh, to pass some of their stuff to the Senate. But of course, the House won't pass it since Republicans control the House. So that's why they wouldn't. That's out off the table now. But they get control of the House, and things might, you know, go that way. And so that's why we need to be kind of wary of things. Remember that we have one member of the House that's indicted, and I have another member who's going to be resigning and have a special election. Of course, it is the conservative district in Utah, so hopefully that'll work out okay. And I don't know, the New York district, I think we're going to lose it once this guy actually goes to prison. And I don't want to be negative on his case, but I don't think he's got. I think he's in real trouble on that one. We'll see. If he wins the case, that would be great. He could serve out his term. I don't think he's getting reelected either. That's referring to Santos, of course, but I thought I'd mention that. But I'm not to knock the guy exactly, but I mean, it seems like one of them slipped through the cracks on that one. I mean, the Democrats have to be kicking themselves that they didn't discover this stuff before he got elected. But I think the main thing there was that they didn't expect he would get elected, and so they thought that'd be one of those deals. Another issue I thought that I'd bring to everybody's attention, which I think is just crazy, is that the Michigan House has passed 59 to 50, I believe it is, a bill which makes misgendering people a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. I mean, for misgendering somebody. Now, I think it does have to indicate that the person has to actually know that they're doing it and so forth. And I don't know what all the criteria are, but just that in itself seems to me to be, really kind of over the top. I mean, you could probably beat somebody up and put them in a hospital and probably not get more than 5 years for it. I mean, if they didn't die or weren't permanently maimed. I mean, this seems to me to be really, really overly, toward the extreme transgender community's favors or something. And the sad thing about this is, of course, the Democrats control that legislature, but it had to be some Republicans voting for this to get the 59 to 50 vote, because it's I don't think they have that big of a majority. So I think there's 3 or 4 that did, or something like 3, something like that did. So anyway, but that's I think that's a bad thing. I'm hoping that the courts all may strike that down on the First Amendment grounds. But you never know. I mean, if there's no actual threat of violence involved in it, it seems to me to be a little bit severe, to say the least. But anyway, that's another issue that they've kind of, another bad sign. And the sad thing is that's not like California doing it first, I don't think. This is, or maybe they've done it already, I don't know. But anyhow, that's another event. On other issues, well, I guess we could mention a few things on the previous topics we've had about the Ukraine war, finish up to the end here. I guess we really don't know what the ultimate outcome of what happened last weekend really was. We know that Prigozhin has gone to Belarus, and apparently a significant number of his loyalist fighters from Wagner are going with him. What's unclear is who's going to pay these people in Belarus. Is Belarus going to hire them as a mercenary force, and they're going to pay them? Are they still going to be paid by the Russian Defense Ministry? Is he going to go freelance and just be open to all bidders? I mean, I find this situation to be rather interesting. Of course, we don't know how long he's going to last. I mean, he could still be on Putin's list, and for extreme prejudice, that is a possibility. I don't know if that's it, or then there's always the theory that's being put out. I saw a Newsweek article that basically put out the theory that this whole thing was a false flag. I'm still reluctant to believe that because, essentially, you look at I just think it was too provocative and a little too strange to let something go that far as a false flag. On the other hand, if it's effective false flag, I guess you have to make it look like it's real enough to even fake people out, at least fake me out, right? So we'll just have to wait and see how this all ends up. But I guess the rest of the people in the group are still in Ukraine and probably will be somehow signed into some Russian defense ministry operation, whether they're really going to go as regular soldiers in the Russian army or whether they're going to be in a special units that would be contracted to the ministry. One thing that led to this whole thing, which leads me to think that it isn't a false flag, is the fact that, the Russians, whatever else you think about them, they are a constitutional republic that also allows things that most countries wouldn't allow. Like, well, I mean, they do seem to have a policy that allows assassination of certain people that are considered to be a threat to the regime, and so that sort of thing. So I mean, they have those characteristics, but apparently groups like the Wagner group are really not allowed to operate in Russia. They're actually overseas operations, if you will, like in Syria, for instance. And that's what they were originally organized for. But at the time that the war against Ukraine was launched, of course, that was Ukraine, a foreign country, and so they could legally, under the system, operate them there as contractors. But once they annexed those regions, which is where they're operating, now they're technically under the Russian law, not under international acceptance, but under Russian law, they're in Russia. It's been annexed. And while we don't recognize it and the world community doesn't recognize it, legally in their system they do. So apparently when their contract was up, they said, hey, we can't continue this. You're going to have to sign on to actually be a part of the defense ministry. And of course, that was the guy was making like $900 million a year doing this stuff, if translating it from between the ruble to the dollar. So that's one reason why there was a big revolt. So I think it was probably mostly over money, but we'll have to see what happens next. I'm kind of curious what use will be made by Belarus of them. Of course, Belarus also has the other aspect is Russia's moving nuclear warheads into Belarus, and we don't know exactly what kind. I know there was. I think that they're probably Iskander missile warheads, probably in the 50 kiloton range. That's just a guess, but that seems about right, and it matches what their president of Belarus said about it. So he said it was about 3 times Hiroshima. So that's in that ballpark. So at any rate, so that'll be interesting to see. I mean, the idea of having those kind of wild mercenaries there, plus tactical nuclear weapons in the same area seems a little bit scary to me, but I mean, after all, these guys seem to be kind of operating a little outside the normal behavior. So we'll have to see how that happens. We can only hope that the Russians have some kind of a permissive action link system, such as the U.S. does on theirs. And again, that I don't know how they actually control their warheads, but they're certainly well aware of how we do it, and it sounds to be a reasonable approach. In that case, if the codes are kept back in headquarters in Russia, even if they get a hold of them, there's not a lot they could really do with them. So, I guess they could try to dismantle them, and try to work around the safeguards, but they may not have the technical skill to do it safely, depending on exactly what sort of safeguards are in there. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into that sort of topic. It is an interesting thought. And of course, the war itself is raging on. It looks to me like one thing I'd point out, I didn't mention in my last video on this, I do think there's an increasingly concerted effort of the Ukrainians to actually try to take back Bakhmut. Now, they're really just attacking on the flanks, and they've pushed back. The Russians had kind of put a little pincer around it that they were never able to close completely during the Wagner period, right? Well, now they pushed that pincer back somewhat, not totally back, but they're making small inroads against it. and so they're kind of coming up against some defensive areas. And so we don't, but I'm saying that's an area where there's a very large concentration of Ukrainian troops that are fighting pretty hard. So that's something to watch out to see what happens there. And then that bridge crossing down in the Kherson region. Um, the latest development on that was that the Russians sent infantry in there to try to fight this special unit that the Ukrainians had crossed the bridge on, and they came under heavy artillery fire and took some casualties, and apparently were kind of stopped. And the Ukrainian forces there, small forces there, have set up shop underneath the bridge, using it as a shield. So then the Russians struck the bridge with a Iskander missile, which is like, comes in like a very high volume, and just blew the heck out of that bridge and collapsed it on them. Ouch. So, at any rate, so I don't know how so that was so that's about the state of play on that at the moment. But apparently, that struggle is ongoing, and there are other, I'm sure, Ukrainians have heavily mined the road that goes in there. So, oh well, so it goes. Anyway, so that's kind of it. And everybody thinks that there's going to be another big Ukrainian push coming sometime, probably next week, maybe, probably before the NATO summit. Because again, I think the whole thing is Ukraine wants to show that they're really doing something useful for all the equipment they've been provided before the summit, in hopes of getting more weapons, more capable weapons. So, at any rate, that seems to be about it on that. And I'll be wrapping this up now, and so the year's half over, and I'll of course put this on Rumble as well, and of course the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. So until next time.